2020 has been a rough year. I mean, if 2020 was a TV show, it would be season 8 of Game of Thrones.
Best season ever!
If 2020 starred Ryan Reynolds, it would probably be The Green Lantern in 2011, where they photoshopped the mask on his face. If 2020 was a movie, it would probably be the live adaptation of Avatar: The Last Airbender, directed by M. Night Shyamalan. 2020 isn't any of those things, but it has been a crazy year. There's a pandemic happening. Many of us have been quarantined. There's an immense level of social unrest in the world as we confront a lot of things as a nation that have been happening for a long time. And it's just created this crazy situation for a lot of us for a lot of reasons. Whether you're away from work or you have kids at home now who would normally be at school, there's just a lot of stuff going on. Now, in the midst of all of that, the Wall Street Journal wrote an article that was really interesting to us. It was about how people are using planners in the middle of quarantine. It was really interesting in part because they basically said, hey, go buy a productivity tool like the Heroes Journal and it's gonna help you out. But despite the fact that we sell tools that they told you to buy, we actually think they kind of missed the point about what a journal really does in the midst of a pandemic. Now, what's interesting is when I think about productivity tools, it's kind of a daunting phrase almost. I think about high-powered CEOs or big name artists or writers who have a bunch of stuff they need to get done in a day and have to carve out time to be productive and use these high-powered tools to juice every single last bit of productivity out of themselves. And what's interesting, when you read an article like this and you see the people engaging with it and the people that they're talking about it, is those people aren't very different from you and I. In fact, many of them are from times of life when you kind of wonder what productivity has to do with, say, being retired. It's a time of life when you probably don't have a whole lot of things that you have to get done. So what's the point of being productive? And I think it raises a really, really interesting question. Now, the question is this: what is the purpose of staying productive when you don't have a big goal? Now, maybe you still have a big goal, but I know for me and for many of us, the pandemic has thrown us off from our big lofty plans, whether it was a plan to get in shape or to write your album or your book, or even the more mundane but equally important part of developing better relationships. Maybe you're stuck at home with somebody and you're getting to know them really, really fast. I mean, I think we've all been there. And to answer that question of what is the purpose of staying productive during a pandemic or staying productive when there's no big goal, I think we get at the heart of what the Wall Street Journal article misses just a little bit. Now, if we think back to life before a pandemic, before quarantine, back when things were ordinary and we got to go places and do things with people and be outside, oh God. When we think back to that time, there were ordinary rhythms, things that we would do every day or every week. It might be going to class or going to work and seeing your coworkers. It might be going to the gym after work, or maybe it's a book club, another social function. And those constituted the things, the ways that you would spend your time in the day and the choices that you would make. And within each of those things, you probably had little rituals that you would perform as well. I would go to work and I would get my first cup of coffee, and then I would go for a walk at a certain time. I would get lunch with certain people. And those things, even though they're quite ordinary, are actually really meaningful. And what can happen is if over the course of a couple of days, you don't show up for those things, maybe you were sick, maybe something happened, maybe it's just a malaise, you find yourself kind of in a funk. Your sleep schedule gets thrown off because you don't really have a reason to get up anymore. You're not feeling that great because you didn't work out. And you find yourself in this funk, in this rut. And it can take a lot of work to get out of that rut, to get back into that ordinary rhythm. And that really is at the heart of why productivity matters at a time when there's no big goal. Now, what's interesting is that while all of us have probably experienced that, maybe it was a time of depression, maybe it was physical sickness or a tragedy in the family, what's happening is that all of us are experiencing that right now at the same time because of quarantine. Universally, everybody has been impacted this in some way. And I don't want to speak to the truly tragic circumstances that some people are undergoing. That's a whole nother level. But even at the ordinary level, all of us are thrown off of our ordinary rhythms. All of us don't get the option of living our lives the exact way that we would like to. And that actually has an immense impact, not only on our external worlds, but on our internal sense of normalcy. Now, at a theory level, what's happening here is that we all live in an external world. And the story theory would call this the ordinary world. And that ordinary world has things that we do, choices that have already been made for us, choices that we love, where we work, where we go to school. Probably some things we don't love as much, like where we work or where we go to school. But all of those things together constitute an external list of boxes we can check that provide us with an internal sense that life is normal, life is okay, and everything is going to be fine. And right now, that's taken away from us. I think the point is important to make as to why exactly we get thrown off when we're stuck in quarantine. See, it's not just that you can't work out because the gym is closed, or you can't see your coworkers except on a Zoom call with a weird background and you don't want to be that guy, or you're stuck at home with your kids who you love dearly but would love them even more if they got to go to school. The reason those things are crazy is not just because of the physical things themselves, meaning we can still work out and we can still have social interaction. It's because all of those things represent your ordinary world, the ordinary way that you spend time that helps bring you a sense of internal normalcy. And when you can't do those things, like go to the gym and work out, or go to work and go through the rituals of going to work, it creates an internal sense of chaos, an internal sense that things are not right, that the world is not as it should be. Now, I keep using the phrase the ordinary world, which is kind of interesting or unusual because what world am I referring to if not this one, the ordinary one? But I use that because it's a phrase from story theory. Now, if your external world is chaotic and you can't do any of the things that you normally get to do, and that's causing you some internal chaos as well, what I want to tell you is you're like every great hero ever. That gets into what stories can teach us about surviving 2020. Now, when we pick up a book and we read about these magical places like Hobbiton, filled with all these amazing individuals and really interesting places, we might picture ourselves there, or we might talk about them or love them. But we instinctually know as readers, when you pick up The Lord of the Rings, something has to happen, because just a biopic of Frodo staying at home and doing nothing wouldn't be very interesting. So what do we instinctually know has to happen as people who love stories? Something. In story theory, we call that the call to adventure. Now, it could be Gandalf knocking on the door, calling you on an epic quest, or if you're Luke Skywalker, it could be two droids showing up with a message from a princess, or for Neo, it could be somebody telling you to chase the white rabbit all the way down the rabbit hole, except I would probably end the rabbit hole before you get to the third movie because, well, it kind of fell apart.
Get away from me!
Now, with the call to adventure comes an option for the hero, the option to refuse the call and stay in the ordinary world. And oftentimes they do. This is a really important beat of the story where the hero decides, I just want to remain where I am, it's comfortable, it's ordinary, until something happens, a great big inciting incident, something unexpected and dangerous that forces them out of their comfort zone into something totally unknown, kind of like 2020 has done to all of us. Now, none of us chose 2020. We didn't write it out this way or plan it this way, and if one of you did, I have some editing notes, maybe some suggestions for next time around. But while none of us chose what was going to happen this year, we're all stuck with what did happen this year. We're all stuck trying to answer the question, in light of everything that's going on, what can we do? Now, this is where I really like the Wall Street Journal article, because I think it offers a really practical piece of advice. The things that they're talking about in the Wall Street Journal, the things people are using planners and productivity tools to do, aren't great epic works of art. They're not necessarily amazing companies or innovative ideas. They're the most ordinary things, because I think when we're thrown this far out of the ordinary, doing the most ordinary things is the most heroic thing that we can do. And this article is about people using a journal to make their bed, or to take a shower, to do things that would normally be so commonplace, but because of circumstance are so key to restoring some sense of internal normalcy in the world. Now, the reason I love the people in that Wall Street Journal article so much and what they're talking about is because most of them don't have the skills to go solve the problems happening in the world right now. I think that's true for most of us. I certainly can't solve 2020. I don't think you can either. So what then is the best next option? Well, I love what they're doing because they're reclaiming some sense of that external world. You know, I don't know if you've ever experienced missing going to the gym once, and then the next time you go, it's even harder, and maybe cutting class is a little easier. And you find yourself going in this downward spiral where missing one thing leads to missing the next. Well, the same thing works in reverse. By starting doing the small thing, you can actually create that upward spiral. And that small thing might be something as large as taking another stab at writing your book, or it could be something as small as making your bed. Those things might seem like different things, but they share one really important trait. Both are heroic, because both require courage. Heroes aren't shaped by the worlds they live in or by the tools that they use. They're shaped by the choices that they make. Choices to be courageous, to be hopeful, and to be virtuous. And in the year of 2020, that might look a little bit different than it did in the year of 2019. It might look a little bit more ordinary. But even though we might not be able to solve this year's problems with a sword and a shield, maybe we could solve them with a pen and a piece of paper and the willingness to make our own worlds just a little bit better. Thanks for watching that. I know 2020 has been difficult, so if you need help, we created a product called the Heroes Journal. It's based off of the best of story theory and goal setting, so whether you still have big goals for 2020 or just need a little help getting through the day, it's perfect for you. This is my personal journal. I'm not gonna show you what I wrote in there because it's private, but it's in Wildwood Green, our latest color. I'm really stoked about it. It's designed to help you out. So if you wanna learn more about that, you can go to theheroesjournal.co or visit our YouTube page. We have some videos breaking down the science and the fandom behind the journal and how it works. Finally, every week we post videos about story theory and goal setting, how they play out in your personal life. So leave a like, hit subscribe, and we'll see you next week.